Most hunters treasure those quiet moments alone among the towering pines and maples, basking in solitude as they wait for signs of life in the underbrush. But sometimes, the dark forest holds chilling surprises no sportsman could expect. These are 3 terrifying true stories of hunters who faced paranormal danger in the autumn woods. The Cabin Intruder. Our first tale begins with a man named Paul, who liked to travel up from Boston to hunt the prime forests of rural Maine whenever deer season opened. Having taken several trips with his uncle over the years, Paul decided to finally go solo when his uncle's health began to decline. He booked a cozy cabin on 20 acres of private land, abutting a national park, excited to stalk the woods and hone his skills on his own. After the long drive up, Paul arrived at the isolated cabin late Friday night. His headlights cut a feeble swath through the inky woods as he slowly rolled up the dirt lane. Ancient pines pressed close on either side and a deathly silence hung in the brisk autumn air. The cabin's key was hidden under the mat just as the owner had promised. Paul quickly stashed his gear and scanned his surroundings, comforted by the warmth within but chilled by the stark darkness outside. He set an alarm to be up before sunrise, eager to explore a new patch of forest come morning. The next day, Paul was navigating the gloom of the national park within a half hour, equipped for a full day's hunt. After wandering deep into the shadowy trees, he decided to post up behind a tangle of mossy logs perched atop a small ridge. Scanning the area, his eyes locked on a promising thicket about 80 yards downhill, a perfect spot for deer to gather at dawn or dusk. As the pale morning light began to trickle through the canopy, Paul heard a snap of twigs in the thicket, followed by the crunch of leaves underfoot. Had his early arrival paid off? Heart pounding, he fumbled for his rangefinder. But moments later, a gruff voice called out from behind, shattering the heavy quiet. "What the hell are you doing here? Hunting's restricted in this section." Paul swiveled, shocked to see a powerfully built older man with a scraggly beard glaring at him from beneath a faded cap. After Paul apologized and explained himself, the stranger grunted, his stern face twisting into a scowl. "I watched you drive right up to that cabin. Those city folk always come here with the wrong ideas." Unease trickled down Paul's spine. How long exactly had this man been observing him? The interloper offered one last warning not to return before disappearing into the thick woods as abruptly as he had emerged. Paul gathered his nerves and relocated his hunt to a different park, but his brush with the gruff stranger unsettled him more and more as the day wore on. He couldn't shake the feeling that cold, intense eyes still tracked his every move. That evening, on returning to the snug cabin, Paul was shocked to find signs of an intruder. His duffel bag had clearly been rummaged through and a closet door hung conspicuously ajar. Paul knew with mounting dread that it could be only one man. He swept the small cabin, pulse racing, but found no one. The grim stranger seemed to have simply vanished. Exhausted by the day's events, Paul attempted to settle into a fitful sleep, hoping against hope that the worst was behind him. Jolted awake by a creak, Paul stared in horror as the cabin's closet door drifted open. The same bearded stranger who had confronted him while hunting emerged with a twisted smile. "You got me?" he rasped. Paul kept his revolver aimed and called the police with a quaking hand. They swiftly arrived and hauled the madman away. Later, Paul agonized over this stranger who targeted his remote cabin. The owner swore no duplicate key existed, so how had the man known this temporary location? What sinister fate might have met Paul if he failed to defend himself alone amongst those ominous pines, that long, cold night? The shadowy watcher's motives remained a disturbing mystery. The tall, dark figure. Our next tale of hunting horror begins on a frigid November evening in the dense forests of Upper Michigan. 14-year-old Tim was eager to join his dad and older cousin on their annual deer hunting trip, his first time soloing without adult supervision. After being dropped off at his ground blind a few miles south, Tim settled in amongst the brittle grey trees as early winter dusk began to descend. The bitter cold soon had him packing up earlier than expected, teeth chattering as he slipped his bright pink youth rifle over his shoulder and began the long walk to meet his father and cousin. Crunching through the silent woods, Tim followed their pre-planned route, paying little attention to the growing darkness. About halfway to the rendezvous point, Tim paused as an unexpected noise echoed from somewhere in the gloom behind him. The snap of a branch, perhaps only a squirrel rummaging through icy leaves for forgotten acorns. But the otherwise unearthly quiet sent a chill up his neck nonetheless. He glanced over his shoulder and squinted into the pooling shadows between the trees, seeing nothing. The woods almost seemed to be leaning closer. With a small shiver that had nothing to do with the cold, he adjusted his backpack and continued on. Before long, the last dusty glow of dusk faded entirely, leaving Tim stumbling slowly through inky blackness, compass and landmarks his only guide. A nearly full moon hovered amongst the stars, casting just enough pale light for him to spot the next tree or dip in the land. The promise of a warm cabin and friendly faces kept his young imagination at bay. Blood-curdling screams shattered the frigid night behind 14-year-old Tim. Some warped predator closed in fast through the dark, mute woods. Tim ran for his life, the unused rifle banging wildly against his back. His dad's distant calls barely registered through the panicked adrenaline rush. Tim crashed through a copse of trees into a small moonlit clearing and froze. There crouched a hulking 10-foot midnight monster, etched from primal darkness. Man-shaped but grotesquely distorted with spindly, multi-jointed limbs, no earthly life form could twist in such ways. Smooth shadows engulfed its head where facial features should have been. It unleashed another ungodly scream point-blank at Tim before the boy unfroze and dashed faster than ever toward the safety of family and cabin. Though later they found no physical trace, the wraith haunted Tim's dreams for years. Now grown, he still glimpses odd movements in the cold woods and hears chilling wails on the lonely wind after dusk. Some eternal stalker yet lurks in those forests, forever haunting the landscape of his youth. The Hunting Blind Stalker. The final tale of backwoods horror transports us to a sprawling family ranch in southern Texas that 13-year-old Jake has visited each autumn for hunting since early childhood. Arriving late on Friday night with his father, grandfather, and the ranch owner's family, Jake was thrilled as always to wander the land he knew so well and hopefully bag a prize buck. But scarcely an hour after they built up the campfire and settled in, a scream rent the darkness that curdled Jake's blood. No animal cry, but a warped human shriek brimming with torment. Jake's wide eyes found his father's equally disturbed gaze. After a fruitless search by some of the men, the camp attempted to regain its ease amidst forced chuckles. Must have been some odd bird cry, they reasoned. But Jake lay sleepless for hours inside his tent, shotgun clutched tight to his thudding chest. At dawn, Jake reluctantly headed to his assigned hunting blind as his stalwart grandfather departed on his four-wheeler, without a backward glance, as confident and self-sufficient as always. But Jake could not shake the lingering unease from that wretched scream. The surrounding forest took on a more sinister countenance in the creeping morning light. He settled anxiously into the blind, reminding himself nothing evil could penetrate this land in daylight. Only the phantom screams refused to fade from his mind fully. The woods appeared to press too close, hiding too many thinly spaced trees and bushes where anything could lurk. Sleep deprivation began melding daydreams with reality, until a snapping branch wrenched Jake upright, heart racing. Peering through his nightscope, he saw a humanoid silhouette emerging between the trees. In the half-light, it seemed to shift and waver, blending forest and form. Jake imagined a gnarled hand and evil grin before it turned to face him directly. He fired his .22 repeatedly to no effect. The awful truth crashed down. This was no mirage. The featureless figure had not flinched, bullets apparently passing straight through it. The stalker tilted its head slowly as if in grim amusement. Then it unleashed the same guttural scream as the prior night, now deafening just across from Jake's hide. Jake abandoned their weapons and ran. Despite daylight revealing no physical traces, Jake knew with dread certainty this was no illusion. Some warped stalker without earthly form attached itself to his family's land. Now grown, Jake still strains every sense for signs of that soundless, screaming stalker's return. No defense against the formless fiend of his dreams. I leave it to you, viewer. Share your own eerie wilderness encounters and help me shine light on these persistent predators. Don't let them remain unseen. Alone we are vulnerable prey. Together we can unveil their hiding places. Smash like and subscribe for more scary true stories around the campfire. And also let us know if you want us to cover any specific topic or true, scary and popular story. Thanks again for watching.